What's the worst crime you ever committed before you turned 10? 5 years old, a man lived in the apartment across the hall from us and he would always say hello and be super cool. Then one day I learned how to write my name, so I decided to scratch it into his car with a nail so everyone knew we were friends. When my mom found out I said it was some other kid with the same name, she didn't buy it. This is the kind of thing that never entirely leaves a person. That ability to have perfectly sound, in one's own head, reasoning for a thing, and then later, in the light of day, it's just not sensible at all. That's part of why I ask kids more questions, give them more of a break than one might expect. My best friend and I grabbed baseball bats and beat the crap out of a random mailbox. Turns out it was the only black family in my neighborhood too. Ah man, this going to be so cool. Accidentally commits hate crime. Hit a baseball at a car windshield and broke it. Usain bolted the frick out of the scene, but then my dad found out about it and made me fess up to the owner. The owner was a good sport and let me off the hook. My dad, however, made sure to pay him to cover the repair costs and took my allowance away for a while. Usain can run a 45 kmph. The more you know. I stole a game of Battleship from a daycare, ship by ship and then colored peg by peg. They just thought we kept losing the pieces because we were kids. I don't know what I expected to do with all the pieces because there was no way I could steal the boards without notice. At the end, you just point out that there isn't much point to having the game boards around anymore and ask if you can have them to use as cases to keep your stuff in. You just don't tell them the stuff is the ships and pegs. My friend wanted to see a nudie magazine. Being little kids, naturally he couldn't buy one over the counter anywhere. So he prodded and talked me into stealing a dirty magazine from the local used bookstore. I had no idea where they kept the dirty magazines. My friend said in the rear of the store. I went there and saw a magazine with a large-breasted, but clothed woman pictured on the cover. I grabbed it, stuffed it under my shirt and brought it to my friend. My friend complained it was the wrong magazine. It wasn't a dirty magazine, just a regular one. He wanted me to go back in there and grab a Playboy. I refused to do it a second time. I was walking in the hall to the bathroom in first grade, and I thought I would save time by pulling my dong out before I got to the bathroom, in front of a teacher and a cop. LOL. Reminds me of the time I was in grade 2 and I went to the washroom. After doing MG thang I stood up and shuffled out of the stall and out of the washroom with my pants still down. I pulled them up as I walked back to class thinking I was saving time. I walked past a class and most of the students saw my butt. So did the teacher. Never talked about this until now. When I was 7 my grandfather would take me to empty parking lots and teach me how to drive. When I was 9 he was in the hospital and was home for several weeks and I would drive his car around town, running errands and picking up groceries for him. Did this for almost 3 weeks and never got caught. My grandfather also taught me how to drive when I was like 8. He used to give me money and a note to go to the store to get him smokes. My cousin and I also burned our treehouse down with said smokes. We got the belt from our grandmother and a good job and a high five from grandpa. I stole $500 and a chapstick from my dad's wallet and put it into my Darth Vader piggy bank and he figured it out pretty quickly when he noticed the chapstick on the floor of my room. Upon looking in my piggy bank and finding the $5 100 bills, I told him it was from allowance when he never gave allowance. No, it's allowance from one of my other dads. Hit a kid with my sister's pogo stick. This was mid-80s, and he was the kid on the street who thought he could bully everyone, but then ran to his mum crying if anyone dared stand up to him. After a full day of his crap, I finally snapped, went to our garage and got the pogo stick. Then I walked, with purpose, and a pogo stick over my shoulder, to his house, into the garden, and twatted him with it as hard as I could. He screamed and went down, while I calmly walked away and put the pogo stick away. I became a bit of a social pariah in the neighborhood after that, but that little crap never bothered me again. I was hoping you pogoed up to him, smacked him upside the head with it and then pogoed away like a badass. Drive-by pogo. Arson. Was playing with matches setting a newspaper on fire. It was pretty windy and the whole newspaper started blowing around. grabbed a cardboard refrigerator box and stomped on the fire till I thought it was out. Well, the box caught fire. The wind picked up the embers and sent them up into a tree right behind my grade school. Tree went on fire and set the next one on fire. I ran, heard the fire engines and hid in my house for the rest of the weekend. That Monday I had to line up in the schoolyard, stared at those two burnt out trees for almost 3 months before they cut them down. When I was about 7 or 8, I was in a department store with my mum. As kids do, I saw something I wanted, pointed it out to my mum and she agreed I could have it. My mum then proceeded to take a while to finish her shopping and I got sick of holding on to it, so I put it in my pocket, intending to take it back out at the checkout. I had completely forgotten it was there. I didn't realize until I got home that I essentially shoplifted. I had a breakdown, thinking I was going to get arrested. There was this family that lived next to my grandparents, and they moved but I guess had a small car, so they would leave bags outside of the house, pick some up and come back. Well, there was a black bag full of toys and I took it before they had a chance to come back for it. Destruction of federal property. There was a park near my house that had once been a Civil War fort. We found this really cool giant piece of quartz that we decided to dig up and bring home. Turns out it was grave marker for a mass grave of Union soldiers. Oops. My sister once stole the collection plate from church as a toddler. Some would say she was too young to realize the implications of what she did, but her current gold digger attitude tends to make me disagree. When I was about 6, my friend and I broke into my neighbor's house through an open window and stole his dog. I really wanted a dog and my parents wouldn't let me, so my friend and I were convinced we could steal my neighbor's dog and keep it a secret from my parents. We actually got the dog all the way back home and were discussing what to name him when my mom caught us. I'm still so ashamed by this. My sister's 4-year-old just did this with our neighbor's new kitten. Assault. Cut my younger half-sister's hair while she was asleep. Also, my first memory is of her dad holding me down and shaving me bald as punishment for that. I used to steal marbles from school. I came home one day and bawled my eyes out in my room, before asking my mom if thieves go to heck. Yeah, unless they're really sorry for it. I wasn't sorry for it. I cried more. I wasn't sorry for it. Now that's a plot twist. We had a local chess tournament with £500, I think, going to the winner. There was a break in the middle of the game, and little evil 8-year-old me though it would be hilarious to remove add a few of the pieces around. I stole a bunch of Pokemon cards and toys from a comic shop I used to frequent. My parents were going through money problems and fighting, so I thought if I acted out and got caught it could distract them. I got away with it and had a couple $100 and new stuff in my bedroom. That is so sad, yet actually really common. I'm in training currently in a psych program, and we have already read about quite a few case examples like this in our textbooks. The children are labeled as the problem, but in reality just trying to get some attention stop them from fighting. Kidnapping and possible manslaughter. I kidnapped an old lady with dementia and possibly aided in her death shortly after the napping. I didn't know she had dementia, nor what that even was or that it was a thing when I was 7, and I didn't know she was so ill. I still wasn't too familiar with death, never losing a pet or family member yet at 7 years old. She apparently wasn't allowed to walk or do anything really strenuous. I stole her and took her about 10 plus blocks to a park I wanted to show her. She was in her 90s and had heart issues plus lots of other health problems, and oh yeah, the dementia too. She was my great uncle's second wife's mother, I think, and he used to bring her around to visit me and my grandma once in a while, just to let her have some company. She and I would talk and talk and talk since I liked old PPL. Still do BTW, and didn't think it weird or off when she didn't make sense or whatever. So we got along great. The day of her abduction, she mentioned to me how she didn't get out of the house very much and how much she missed the simple act of going to a park. She liked to just chill out on a bench and feed the birds and PPL watch and stuff. That was so awesome to me since I too enjoyed feeding birds and ducks at parks. So my 7-year-old brain was like, frick it, let's do this crap pseudo grandma woman. It was the 80s and just piecing out to wander the neighborhood was still okay. Told my mom I was gonna go play and stole away with this woman. About 4-6 hours later, my mom finds us at said Sweet Butt Park after riding around looking throughout the neighborhood for hours and hours. My mom freaks out and gets us in the car and back home. They thought she had wandered off and overexerted herself and was dead somewhere on the side of the road. They either were thinking of calling the police and reporting her as a missing person, or they did call and they said they couldn't help since it hadn't been a full day yet. Cannot remember. It's been a while. Since she had dementia, they were afraid she would have heart failure in her attempt and not know to get help or forget or whatever. They truly thought she had inadvertently killed herself and didn't put 2 and 2 together that I had probably taken her someplace. Apparently she died a few days, weeks, months later. I cannot remember and didn't really have a good grasp on time elements at 7. I've never asked if it was due to the physical stress I put on her that day that led to her sudden downward health spiral or not. We had a great day though, and she genuinely seemed like she enjoyed the park excursion. She died soon after because her final wish was fulfilled and she was ready to go. Nice work, kid. Theft and vandalism. My sister and I stole spray paint from the store. We would sneak out at 2 AM during the summer and spray up an already spray painted bridge and rock in our neighborhood. Did I mention we lived in a subdivision with good schools and basically no crime? No one ever found out it was us. One day someone was moving into a house across the street. They had a big white moving truck there overnight. Of course, my sister and I thought it looked like a lovely canvas. We wrote "go away" and drew some crude stuff on the sides. The next morning we were sleeping in. I guess our dad had seen our handiwork across the street and peeked in on us. We had spray paint on our fingers. He bought white paint and helped the neighbors cover up our artwork on the rental truck. We were grounded for a long time. I tried to kill my stepfather with a knife when he was sleeping cause he kept abusing me and my little brother. Unfortunately he woke up and beat me and sent me to the air. He was later thrown in prison when he threw my 3-year-old brother against the wall. My real mom, who lied to the cops about him, was also in jail. They are still together and started a whole new family. I stole baking soda and vinegar from the supermarket. I was a mad little scientist. My mom took me shopping to Burlington Coat Factory. Well, Mother's Day was rounding the corner and I saw this cool silver necklace and I thought that would be an awesome gift, but there were 2 problems. Firstly, young me had no money, and secondly, I couldn't ask my mother to buy it. It was her gift. So I took it, and while the cashier was distracted I swiped it across the magnetic alarm deactivator, even though I probably didn't need to, and walked out with it in my pocket. Needless to say, my mom was not pleased, lol. Swiping it to deactivate the alarm was really clever. 10-year-old me would have tried to stealthily throw it over the detectors to myself on the way out. Up until the age of 9 or so, every single time I would visit my best friend, I would pee on his front door. Around 8 years old, I was with my parents at the shops and I decided to try steal a packet of candy cigarettes, so I put them in my pocket. A kid roughly my age was right next to me and I smiled at him as if to be proud of what I just did. He then said, "Put those back." I was shocked because I thought I was being cool and decided to just put them back before he told on me. As I pulled them out of my pocket, my dad saw me and knew what I had just done. By the time we left, everyone in that shop knew my name and how many times I was getting the belt on my butt when we got home. Grand theft cookie, withholding evidence, obstruction of family, justice, was sentenced to 1 day solitary confinement. Badass. Grand theft auto. In the 2nd grade, 2 of my friends and I decided that we didn't like homework, so we decided to talk to the president about it. Our plan was to meet at the airport the next morning to fly to Washington and chat with the president about the situation. While my mother was in the shower, I took her car keys and got into the car. It was a manual and I couldn't reach the pedals anyway, so a neighbor found me in the car slightly rolled down the road. One of my friends said he tried to bike to the airport but he got tired after a block and went home. The other said he forgot about the plan altogether. I think this just made my day. When I was a kid, I made a CDR copy of a CD1 checked out from the local library. The pirate guilt was overwhelming. Terrified I'd be caught through some Big Brother space technology, I ran to the woods, a house away from my own, and threw it like a young Steve Rogers, so add littering to the list. I was in the 4th grade. We were on a field trip to the Children's Museum. We were passing through the souvenir shop on our way back to the bus when something wonderful caught my eye, a shiny new figurine of a Triceratops. Being a dinosaur fanatic at the time, I was immediately smitten. Alas, though, we were not allowed to purchase anything from the shop. But, as luck would have it, a fight broke out near the front of the line, and with all the teachers distracted I saw an opportunity and I took it. Quick as lightning, I reached out and snatched up the beautiful dino and shoved it into my sweatshirt, with nobody the wiser. Thrilled and emboldened by my success, I figured that it was either go big or go home. I was already a criminal anyway, wasn't I? While the hapless teachers continued to prance frantically around the slap fight like a bunch of Sims near a house fire, I was busy shoving into my robber's bag 1 canister of silly putty, 2 Chinese finger traps, a pack of Willy Wonka nerds, a crap ton of those colored rocks mineral things that gift shops always seem to have. I never got caught. I ain't proud of it, but hey, I didn't choose the thug life. The thug life chose me. Robber's bag made think of those sacks from cartoons with a $sign on it. I laughed quite hard. Take your upvote. You've earned it. Went through a stage of stealing loads of stuff from people at school such as pencil cases, those awesome bendy rulers and just loads of things like that. I still feel bad about it now and it's been 7 years. Although in my defense the girl I stole the whole pencil case from had bullied me for several years. Actually found out from my mum yesterday that she stole the exact same things when she was my age, so maybe it's just a weird klepto stage that some kids go through. My favorite ruler. Gone forever and I thought I lost it. I shot my dad. To be fair, he shot me first. In hindsight, neither of us was mature enough to be left alone with pellet guns. The first 2 sentences scared me at first, then I realized pellet guns. At 8 years old, my parents accused me of robbing the cookie jar. I plead not guilty, but the cookie crumbs in my room later served as damning evidence. I demand Netflix release a documentary on this case in the hope you get a second trial. When I was a young lad, I accidentally made eye contact with a girl in town. I felt so guilty I almost turned myself in. When I was a young lad, a young girl, I saw her accidentally and looked her in the eye. Opening mail that didn't belong to me, which is a federal crime. I used to take the letters addressed to the former owners of the house and pretend they were mine because it made me feel grown up to have mail to open. This is probably the most innocent felony a young person can commit. Not me, a friend of mine from high school. He revealed to me one day that he attributed one event from his childhood that forever changed the course of his life for the worse. He was in school with his friends and they were standing at the top of a stairwell. They were all playing with matches and he ended up lighting one and throwing it down the stairs. Well, that match landed on a girl's head and her hair caught on fire. She wasn't badly hurt, but apparently there was a Michael Jackson-ish hairspray effect, and a lot of her hair went up in flames. He was expelled from the school district and sent to a school for problem children. He wasn't an animal, but he was thrown in with the worst kids in town. There was no focus on learning and pretty soon, school was not school any longer. When I knew him, he was in the technical stream in high school focusing on automotive. He simply said that every day since that day had been a struggle and he realized that the life he would have had was no longer possible. As a grown adult now, I have a hard time thinking about how down a kid could be, that he thinks it is all over from 10 years old on. A local department store used to have these really rad toy displays that were on the end of each aisle. I would generally help myself to a toy from said display. However, my mother never caught on because I'd generally also leave whatever toy that she had let me bring to the store. So though I was stealing, I was kind of treating it like a toy exchange program. There's a chocolate place near where I live that has tons and tons of bulk candy chocolate. I used to stuff my pockets and not tell my mom. When I was in middle school I started an illegal business selling sweets at school. I knew it wasn't right but I didn't know it was against the law. I went to the shop in my village and bought a bunch of sweets that you couldn't really get anywhere else. They were dirt cheap and caked in sugar, the exact thing 9-year-olds love. Then I'd get to school and sell them for 3, sometimes 4 times the price. I made £20 in a week, and I remember my parents kept asking me where I was getting all this change from. I said I found it on the school bus. Eventually I blew my cover when I tried to sell one sweet, retail price 30p, to a boy in the year below for a tenner. His mum found out and came round my house, had a go at me and my parents, told my mum what I was doing. Dad laughed and praised my business acumen. Mum was horrified, made me write a letter to every kid I'd sold sweets to. That took some doing, and returned the money to school. I accidentally pooped in the bathtub right before we were going to see The Lion King. I picked up as much as I could with soggy toilet paper and flushed it, but the rest I had to finger down the drain. I got away with it at the time, but it ruined seeing Lion King in theaters. I had to come clean a week or so later and admit what had happened. I just liked the bubbles coming out from my farts. I didn't know I'd have a fecal murder scene on my hands. I burned down 3 trees in the side of a building when I was 8. I had found matches in the staircase leading down from my apartment and I was lighting the pine straw on fire with my friend Daniel. We had gotten down to the last match and we decided to let this one go for a little longer. The other ones we had stomped out after a few seconds. Anyway, you know how fire works and soon it was out of control. I remember I ran home and told my mom right away what I had done, but I did lie to the police. He walked me over to his car and threatened to take me to jail before I confessed. This led to me requiring a parent to be with me and eventually my parents were evicted because they refused to pay for the damages. In kindergarten my friend and I stole all the sand from the sandbox at school and hid it in our own individual cubbies. We intended to sell it back to the school and were singing money, money, money by the pound until someone noticed the awful mess we made. I worked in a toy store while in high school. We always had little kids come in and steal stuff. If we caught them walking out of the store, our manager would take them to the back of the store and take their picture and put it up on our wall of kids that stole. We told them that from now on if they ever came into our store the employees would know that they were thieves. I think about that now and think, gosh, if that happened today, the toy store would probably be sued. Also, if someone found all those photos of little kids, what would they think? Nah dude. The toy store would be fine. They have a right to do that and plenty of places do the same thing like malls and amusement parks. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.